In this video, I'm going to share with you why you always feel negative, why it's easier to feel negative than it is to feel positive. I'm going to be sharing the work of two amazing spiritual teachers. The first one is Dr. Joe Dispenza, and the second one is Dr. David Hawkins. Now, we'll start with Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. I learnt about his work first. And he talks about how the body memorizes emotions. So a lot of us are walking around with bodies that have memorized negative emotions. Our bodies can memorize multiple negative emotions. Things like anger and frustration, unworthiness, fear, anxiety, guilt, shame, lack. The list goes on. And he talks about how the body is in control. You might think, what? I thought the mind was in control. The mind is originally in control. The mind conditions the body, and then the body takes over. And I'll share an example of this that most people will understand. Have you ever noticed when you drive a car, and sometimes you get to your destination, and you don't remember the drive? Like you were driving on autopilot. You're like, how did I actually get here? I don't remember the drive. It's because the body was in control and the body was driving the car. When you first learn to drive though, when you're new, you're that young teenager learning to drive, you're having to use the mind. You're having to really think about what you're doing. Okay, I've got to change gears. I've got to use the pedals. I've got to use these indicators. So you're in your head operating the car. Through practice and repetition, as you start driving around, your body will start to learn how to operate the car better than the mind. This is when it becomes second nature. So that's an example of the body being in control. Humans are habitual creatures that spend most of their day on autopilot. So as we go about our day and we go on autopilot, we run off these subconscious programs. We have thought patterns, emotional patterns, and behavioral patterns. So the body is running on an emotional program. These emotions that it's memorized. The key to unmemorizing these emotions is Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches you how to recondition the body to a new mind. So you do this through meditation. You use the mind in meditation to imagine being the preferred version that has the positive thoughts, positive feelings, and positive actions and behaviors. Through repetition of doing that every day in meditation, you cause your body to unmemorize the negative emotions, and then you cause the body to rememorize positive emotions instead. He tells you to pick one emotion to unmemorize, and as you unmemorize that one emotion, he says a lot of the other negative emotions go with it. So when I was doing this work, I've applied Dr. Joe Dispenza's work, I instantly knew which emotion I needed to unmemorize. Like I knew that I had a lot of negative emotions that I had memorized, but there was one that just stuck out like a sore thumb that was a big problem for me, and that was frustration. I was easily frustrated. Now, what Dr. Joe Dispenza also talks about is when your body memorizes these emotions, your body becomes addicted to those emotions. And I realized that within myself. I realized, okay, frustration is definitely an emotion I've memorized. And I could see what he means by how we become addicted to it. He pretty much talks about how you will find any reason to feel those emotions. And I noticed that if something, even something small, went wrong, I would get frustrated over it. It was like any reason to get frustrated, I would allow myself to get frustrated because my body's addicted to the emotion. It's like getting that hit. Like if you're a heroin junkie and you're getting that hit of heroin, and it's like, oh, now I feel good, I got my hit. The body does the same thing with these negative emotions. It's like, I need that hit of that frustration. So it looks for any excuse to feel it. When I realized all of this, I was like, oh my God. So I started applying his work which is observing yourself through meditation. So I'd observe myself getting frustrated. And then as you observe yourself every day and you develop this self-awareness, he teaches you to interrupt these unconscious patterns. That's the key to breaking this addiction, because you have neurons in the brain that fire and wire together. So if you allow yourself to keep feeling those negative emotions and giving yourself those hits because you're addicted, you're allowing the neurons in the brain to keep firing and wiring. So the idea is you interrupt these unconscious patterns. Like when I observe myself in meditation getting frustrated, it helps me to have the awareness so that when I'm going about my day and I go to feel frustrated, I can stop myself because I was observing myself in meditation. It's like, oh, I'm getting frustrated. Okay, calm down, back off. And by doing that, by not reacting and allowing my body to get that hit of that emotion, I'm actually weakening the synaptic connections in the brains, because cells that fire together wire together, but cells that don't fire together don't wire together. So that's how you weaken these connections in the brain. So it's a really great practice to observe the self so you can interrupt these unconscious patterns as you go about your day, because like I said, we spend a lot of our day just going on autopilot. So it's interrupting those autopilot patterns. When you get the body to start memorizing positive emotions every day through repetition, just like when you drove that car, learning to drive, and your body learned how to do it better than the mind, so you can now drive the car on autopilot without really thinking about it. In the same way, through repetition, you're getting your body to memorize positive emotions, so then it becomes your natural state. You'll start to wake up feeling positive because it's your natural state, because you've caused these synaptic connections in the brain, and through repetition, you hardwire those connections. So it becomes a new subconscious program. So this is the first step to break the addiction to these negative emotions, to stop feeling negative all the time. Again, this is Dr. Joe Dispenza's work. Now we're going to move into Dr. David Hawkins' work, and he talks about suppressed emotions. So suppressed emotions are different to memorized emotions. Suppressed emotions is, well, he talks about how all of us, every single one of us, have repressed or suppressed emotions in our body. We're not taught how to actually deal with our emotions. And so there are three ways that humans deal with emotions. It's either suppress or repress them, express them. So even expressing the emotion, he says you're still suppressing some of the emotion into the body. And escapism. So a lot of people will use things like drugs or alcohol, food, TV, sex, people, all these different distractions from these emotions. We escape. And by doing that, we keep suppressing them in the body. Suppressed emotions in the body is what is causing a lot of problems in our life, in our relationships. Suppressed emotions in the body is also the reason why we develop health issues. And this is backed by science. So this is why we want to learn how to deal with negative emotions correctly, so that they don't actually make us sick, so they're not ruining our life or ruining our relationships or causing all these unnecessary problems. And so the more suppressed emotions you have in the body, the more stressed you're going to be. When you get easily stressed, like I was someone that was very easily stressed, that's because I had a lot of emotions suppressed. So throughout childhood, I was physically and emotionally abandoned by my dad, and I was emotionally abandoned by my mum. I remember there was a couple of childhood memories where, as a kid, my older brother was like my bully. Like he would be mean to me sometimes. He might get violent with me, run me down with words. And I remember when I was about 5 or 6, at 2 different times, I was upset and crying because of my brother being mean to me. One time I was with my dad, and he didn't know why I was crying, but he just yelled at me to stop crying. The other time I was with my mum, and she just blew it off and she didn't comfort me, she didn't deal with my emotions, she just blew it off and took me inside and didn't even deal with my brother or or talk to him about what he had done. Both of those experiences taught me to basically suppress my emotions. It taught me that no one cares if I'm crying, if my brother's upset me. And throughout childhood, I suppressed a lot. From those moments forward, whenever I felt upset and I felt like I needed to cry, I never went to my parents. I kept it all to myself and I bottled it up. By the time I got to the ages of 11 or 12, it started coming out in anger problems. I developed these anger issues that got worse throughout my teenage years. Now I understand all of this information. I can look back and see why this happened. Like, I suppressed so much of my body that it just made me become very angry. And then I became addicted to frustration. Back to Dr. Joe work. So I wasn't taught how to deal with these emotions. I believe a lot of men are taught the same message. You're not allowed to cry. Crying's a weakness. You're not allowed to have emotions. So men are suppressing a lot. I would say more than females, but females are, women are still suppressing as well. But I also believe this is why there are higher suicide rates amongst men. And that's because when you're suppressing these emotions, it gets to the point where it gets too much. You start having suicidal thoughts, and you're having suicidal thoughts because you're operating in a lower state of consciousness. I just got really distracted by cats running on the roof, and I was just making sure it wasn't my cat that was being chased. Okay, sorry. So Dr. David Hawkins teaches us about using the letting go technique to release these suppressed emotions. And he also calibrated the scale of consciousness using kinesiology muscle testing, and he discovered these different levels of consciousness, these different emotional states. And he said 85% of humans are operating in these negative frequencies. Part of the reason is because humans are operating from their egos, but I think it really just comes down to a lack of self-awareness. We're not taught any of this information. Like, we should be taught this through school, and we're not. So because we're not aware, it's really easy for us to operate from our egos, allow the ego to control us, keeping us in these low frequencies. But it's also because of all the emotions that are suppressed in the body, keeping us in these low frequencies as well. An interesting thing he teaches in his book, he has a couple of books that I read. One is Power versus Force, which teaches you about how he calibrated the scale of consciousness. And then there's the book Letting Go, which teaches you the letting go technique. Now, using the letting go technique is how you work your way up the scale of consciousness. Now, what he says in the book, though, is very interesting. Truth is subjective because at each level of consciousness, you perceive things differently. So the same scenario that happens in life, he used an example like someone hitting your car. If you're operating in shame, you're going to view that situation or have a different thought on that situation than if you were in guilt or apathy or grief. And as you work your way up the scale, this is when your thoughts will become a lot more positive. Someone hits your car, oh, no worries, insurance will sort it out. When you have that type of thinking, it's because you're in a higher frequency. So each level perceives the same situation differently. I was like, how crazy is that? Now, when you're operating in these lower frequencies, this is when you actually have suicidal thoughts. Suicidal thoughts is to do with the level of consciousness you're operating in. You're operating in a low level of consciousness. He talks about in his book how there was there was a thing that was done that kind of proves that in the brain we have a filing system where each emotion can have like 1,000 thoughts in this filing system in the brain. So he says you want to deal with the emotions, not the thoughts, because if you're dealing with the thoughts, there could be thousands of thoughts that you're having to deal with. But if you deal with the emotion, you get rid of one emotion, a whole bunch of thoughts will go with that emotion. This is why he says deal with emotions, not thoughts. It's a quicker way of getting yourself to think and feel positively. There are other ways you can release these stored emotions, these suppressed emotions in the body. And it can be things like somatic breath work, which is using your breath in a specific type of way to bring the energy up and release it. Or things like EFT, which is emotional freedom technique. It's a tapping in certain points technique. The thing about letting go, though, this technique is this is something you can do by yourself. These techniques, you need like a practitioner. You've got to work with someone else. So this is why the letting go technique is great. You can do this by yourself at home, and it's really simple to do. And if you actually want to learn more in depth about this technique and the different emotional states, I recommend reading his book, Letting Go. It's a very eye-opening read when it comes to our emotions and how to deal with them. So what the letting go technique is basically you allow the emotion to be there, because a lot of the times we resist those uncomfortable emotions. We try to distract ourselves from them. So instead of doing that, he says, allow the emotion to be there. Accept how you feel. Sit with it. Be present with it. Feel into the emotion and observe it, because you aren't your thoughts or your emotions. You're the consciousness that can take the step back and observe. By doing this, by allowing the emotion to be there, by feeling into it, you're processing the emotion instead of suppressing it. By processing the emotion, this is how you release it rather than storing it in the body. It's a very simple technique. It's literally feeling your emotions, because feeling is healing. Don't be afraid of the uncomfortable emotions. Don't run away. Go into it. Sit with it. Feel into it. Because emotions are energy in motion. So these emotions are just energy. By letting go and surrendering these emotions one by one, because we have a lot that is suppressed and pushed down, as you start releasing one by one, it's going to help you work your way up into these higher frequencies. It's basically clearing out your rubbish that's keeping you down in the lower frequencies. And this is what frees you up emotionally. When you free yourself up emotionally by feeling into these emotions, you will raise your vibration. But as you raise your vibration, this is when you start creating a better reality for yourself, because you create your own reality with your thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. So if you have negative emotions, you're going to have negative thoughts. You're going to be in a negative state of being. You're going to create negative experiences in your reality. By dealing with these emotions and releasing them using the letting go technique, so they're no longer stored in the body, it will cause you to raise your vibration, to start thinking and feeling more positive. Letting go is a powerful technique that will change your life. Because like I said, as you go up into higher levels, your perception on reality changes. You start seeing things in a more positive way. Now, when I first learned about both Dr. Joe Dispenza's work and Dr. David Hawkins' work, I got confused. Because Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches you about memorized emotions and interrupting these unconscious patterns. He basically trains you through meditation to be able to catch yourself out. So when I feel frustration, I catch myself out. Oh, frustration's coming up. Okay, change my state of being. Don't allow myself to feel into that frustration. And then I learned the letting go technique. So I was like, which is it? Am I supposed to feel emotions, or am I supposed to interrupt the unconscious patterns? And I was confused about it for a few months, to be honest. I was wondering about it on my mind a lot, because I kind of felt like it's both as well. I was sort of feeling like, I know for 100% I have suppressed emotions. I know I suppressed so much as a child, but I also know I'm addicted to frustration, and I'm looking for any excuse to feel frustrated. And it's funny, because the universe can communicate to you in so many different ways. The universe answered my question through another person. This was just a couple of weeks ago. I was on a Dr. Joe Dispenza Facebook group, and someone replied to me, and they basically said that it's both, which is what I was originally thinking as well. He said, it's up to you to figure out which one is the memorized emotion and which ones are the suppressed emotions that need to be felt. And he also talked about how a lot of people think Dr. Joe Dispenza isn't about feeling emotions because of what he teaches. He said that is not true. There is a video that he sent to me, a YouTube video of some dude, I can't remember his name, and Theo Von, whoever that dude is. I always see Theo Von popping up on social media, but I don't even know who he is, but he's always popping up, and he was like, kind of like, I don't know if it was a podcast or having some sort of interview with this guy that I think is like, I could be wrong, but maybe a UFC fighter or an MMA fighter or something like that. And during their little podcast interview thing, the other guy, who I think's a fighter of some sort, was having this emotional, like these emotions that were coming up. I don't even know what led to this, like what they were originally talking about, but he was just like really dealing with like emotions coming up, and he was trying to like, you could kind of see he's trying to hold them down. And someone showed Dr. Joe Dispenza this video and said, what do you think about this? And Dr. Joe Dispenza's response was, he needs to feel those emotions. So it was like trauma that was stored in the body that was coming up that needed to be felt to be released. So Dr. Joe Dispenza does believe in releasing these suppressed emotions as well. And so what the person was saying to me again is that it's up to you to figure out which one is which. So realize this, if you are constantly feeling negative, you most likely have suppressed emotions that need to be released using the letting go technique. This will free you emotionally, and your body may even be addicted to these emotions. If there is one emotion that stands out for you, that is the one you would want to focus on releasing, because like what Dr. Joe Dispenza says, when you memorize one emotion, the rest go with it. If you want to apply Dr. Joe Dispenza's technique, I recommend getting his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He has the meditation process that he teaches you at the end of the book on how to do this. I applied it for over 6 months. I still do it to this day because it gets me in a really high vibrational state, but it really did help me become a lot more aware of myself as I go about my day, as I go on autopilot. I'm able to catch myself out when I go to feel frustrated, and then I stop myself, and it has really improved my emotional state. Like I started just noticing I'm naturally feeling a lot more positive and happy, and waking up positive and happy, and it's because I'm reconditioning my body. So this is why we're always feeling negative. I hope this video was valuable to you, and if it was, just let me know by hitting the like button or write a comment. If you like this sort of content, make sure you subscribe and hit the bell notification. Hope you have an awesome day. I'm going to leave another video here that's a great follow-up video that I highly recommend watching.